All right, welcome everybody to a special edition. We are going to be recapping the early signing period that happened today. What's good, man?
What's going on, man?
Not much. Hey, yo, everybody, we got Randal Chatman here. Man, I'm telling you, National Signing Day for me, dude, this is like Christmas.
Oh, early. A little bit early.
Couldn't sleep last night. Was all just excited this morning. It's like just unwrapping the gifts. Like, what gifts am I gonna get today?
Man, dude. And if you're a Bama fan, you got a lot of them. I mean,
22 to be exact.
I'm telling you, all quality.
Yeah.
That's how we do it, though.
Yeah. But I will say, this is not going to be a Bama show. I mean, Bama had a great class, and it's not done yet. This is the early signing period. They still got the normal signing period in February, but Georgia has a good class so far. The top 4 teams so far are SEC teams, and I think that's telling a lot. That we're going to get into all of that though. So man, it started off this morning, the drama, and that's kind of what makes college football, no matter what season is in, is drama.
Right.
Recruiting season, drama. So wake up this morning and find out that Dax Hill, the number 1 safety out of Oklahoma, that was committed to Alabama, sends his letter of intent in to Michigan.
Man, when I saw that, all I could think was, he don't want to be good.
He don't want to be great.
Nah, he don't want to be great, man. He ain't trying to. He don't trust the process already, man. And a lot of people were comparing this cat to Deontay Thompson, man. You know what I'm saying? Just being like, very rangy and athletic, man. And I mean, those are the type of safeties that we get that that we try to recruit now.
Yeah.
And to help protect that back end, man. And so a lot of rumors were, that he was coming to Bama because Harbaugh may go off to the NFL, and that kind of thing. And like I was saying earlier, man, off air, I never really heard much about that, but he obviously assured him that he wasn't. He's going to be in Ann Arbor next year, and so he ended up flipping back to the Wolverines, man. So good luck.
Yeah, and I followed this kid's recruiting. Back in the summer, it was thought to be an Alabama-Oklahoma State battle because Oklahoma State is where his brother was.
Right.
So, but Michigan was kind of on the outside. Then he took a visit to Ann Arbor, and he came back, and everybody was like, "Hey, Michigan is a real threat." And then he committed to Michigan, and everything was quiet. And then about a week and a half ago, all of a sudden, he comes out on Twitter and says he's decommitting from Michigan and committing to Alabama out of nowhere. And so you wake up this morning like, man, Dax Hill is coming to Alabama.
Right.
Breaking news. Oh, no, he's not. He's going to Michigan. And what you said makes sense. If he was worried about Harbaugh going to the NFL, that makes sense as to why he would flip and then flip back.
Right.
But outside of that, I mean, that's just kind of how the day started. It was just kind of indicative of, I'm going to be honest, I'm getting too old to hang on to what these 17, 18-year-old kids are going to do. And for 364 days a year, I don't. I step back. I say, hey, man, whatever's going to happen, happens. But on signing day, you know what I'm saying? I jump in and I'm on edge like, man, where are you going? Where is he going? What time his decision? And today, man, I love it. It's stressful, but I love it. So Bama, so far, number 1 class. What stands out about this class so far to you?
Well, addressing needs and concerns that I definitely had, based on the current roster, of players that's in Tuscaloosa right now. A big get for us, man, with all of the defensive linemen that we have coming in, man. When you're looking at the defense as constructed right now, with possibly, we could very well lose, or Bama could very well lose all 3 of their down linemen that they start. right now this year with
Yeah,
the
that's
type
true.
of year that Quentin Williams is having, man.
Yeah,
And
Quinn Williams is going pro. Isaiah Buggs is a senior. The only question is Raekwon Davis going to come back?
right, right. And going into the season, you were thinking the type of year that he could have, that he would definitely be, will definitely go pro early. But regardless if he stays or leaves, looking at what we got coming in next year, I mean, I know they have to be developed. A lot of these guys, a lot of these interior linemen, they don't come right in making an impact like that immediately. But we will have depth. It's there. The Alfano kid from up in New Jersey, he's motivated. Watched a little piece on him earlier. He was even wearing Raekwon's number. Don't know what that's about, but if that's a sign or something. But he he's highly rated. Plus, with the players we got coming back, man, I'm glad to see that we addressed that, because that was a glaring need to me, based on that depth, and just looking at all of the experience that we're going to have coming back on the rest of the defense next year. What about you?
Yeah, hey, kind of the same thing, addressing needs on both lines of scrimmage, defensive line and offensive line. Offensive line isn't as big of a glaring need, but the guys they got at that position, I mean, when you're talking about bringing in 3 high-level tackles, all 3 ranked within the top 52 players in the country.
Wow.
I mean, no matter what style of football you play, it's won in the trenches. And so when you can bring that kind of talent in, that kind of size, like Evan Neal, 6'7", 6'8", 360, that's going to continue that success that Bama has had up to this point, or the past decade under Saban, is dominating at the line of scrimmage, even no matter whether you're running a 2 tight end offense or 4 wide offense. Hurry up, no huddle, or you need to be able to dominate up front. And so that's kind of what stood out to me, was the recruiting on both lines of scrimmage.
Okay. Something else, man, was making sure that we went ahead and addressed running back. We got the number 1 running back in the country, and Trey Sanders coming in. Just looking at the future of losing Damian Harris. You don't know what Josh Jacobs is going to do. Yes, you do have Najee Harris and Brian Robinson for at least 1 more year. But just going ahead and getting that next guy in, and go ahead and get him groomed and ready to go. He's very confident, and he's already talking about winning the Heisman his freshman year. It's like, come on, dude. So like, man, you gotta go ahead.
I'll just say, just work on climbing up the depth chart first.
Right.
I mean, Najee Harris was the number 1 running back and number 2 overall player in the country 2 years ago. So the thing, you just gonna come in and get the bulk of the carries to where you win a Heisman as a freshman. I like the confidence, but I wonder if he know the depth chart.
Right.
I will say this: we missed out. Alabama missed out on N'Kobe Neal out of Mississippi. He signed with Georgia. We're going to get into Georgia's class next. Man, I'm impressed with what Georgia's able to do. But missing out on him as the number 1 inside linebacker, to me, was less of a blow because of Christian Harris. And you and I talked about Christian Harris yesterday.
Okay.
And I like this kid. He's a projected inside linebacker.
Right.
But he's never played linebacker. And you're like, well, why is he an inside linebacker? Well, because he's 6'2", 240. And you wonder what position he played. He played corner throughout high school at 6'2", 240. So what that tells me is this kid is athletic enough to play corner. And now you're going to move him down to linebacker at that size. To me, that's a guy in today's offense that you need to defend. This guy can stay on the field on 3rd down. He can cover the running back out the backfield. He can cover those tight ends. In your nickel and your dime set, he's not a liability in coverage. And so I'm more excited about having him than I would be a traditional inside linebacker, because I like his potential, even though he does have to get used to playing the position.
Yeah, man. That was a huge get. I didn't know his background about him playing corner until you told me. Because looking at the class, as far as a dressing linebacker, of course, we got Shane Lee as well, who's number one, coming out of Maryland. But I mean, you sit down and tell me that there's a kid who's playing corner at 6'2", 240, and we're moving him to linebacker. I mean, everything that you just said is absolutely true. I mean, he will definitely be athletic enough. I mean, I'm already thinking about the NFL for this cat. When you think about the Gronkowskis of the world and having to defend that. I know I'm getting too far ahead, with this guy's potential, but like you said, on the college level, you think about when we would play in Ole Miss and Evan Ingram would be wide open down the seam. This guy should be able to cover that.
Yeah.
Having a corner background playing linebacker. So, man, that is very impressive. Like I said, I never knew that until yesterday. You schooling me on this dude, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Me too. My first thought was, why isn't he playing safety?
Yeah,
what came to my mind was Cam Chancellor.
Right.
But I'm excited to have this guy as what his potential could be as he learned how to play the linebacker position, especially against the run. It's one thing to play corner, it's one thing to be in coverage, but if you're the inside linebacker, now you got to make calls for the defense, and you got to learn how to plug the gap in the run game. Because you're playing for Saban, you can't stop the run, you're not playing.
Right.
So I'm gonna hold off. I've had high hopes for recruits before that never saw the field, but
yeah.
This Alabama class, and I will say this: it's not the overall highest rated class that Alabama has signed under Saban, but it is the highest average per player. According to 247 Sports, the average rating is 94.4.
Oh my God.
Which is the highest rated individual average of any class that Saban has signed.
Dude, that's crazy, man.
That is. So, I mean, 2 years ago, Alabama signed, I think they had 6 5-stars. They only got 3 in this one, but it's the depth of this class, right? It is I think it's 12. I believe they have 12 guys in the top 100 in this class. Yeah, and that's just sick, But like I said, I'm excited about their class, and I will say this: today was stressful because of those guys over in Athens.
Man, Kirby. Look, man, he getting close, man. He getting close, man. He getting close. I'm getting nervous, man. I ain't having nightmares yet, but man, that joker over there getting close.
Yeah. Georgia is closing the talent gap with Alabama. Right. Now, Alabama's still on top, still number one class, and we can do an Alabama preview, but I honestly believe, depending on who stays, Alabama next year will be better than this Alabama team.
I definitely agree. Just looking at one, let's look at the linebacker position. Mac Wilson could very well come back, which I believe he will come back. Okay, well, there you go. Dylan Moses, he has to come back.
Yep.
All right. Jennings probably should come back. And we'll have Terrell Lewis.
Lewis
back healthy.
Yeah.
So you got 4 linebackers like that with that type of experience. But let's not forget, Chris Allen will be back from injury.
Yep. And Anoma, who was a freshman this year, the number 1 outside edge rusher last year.
Right, number 3 overall player in the country.
Yeah,
last year.
And not to mention also that Deontay Thompson is the only person you're losing out the secondary.
Right.
So pretty much the whole secondary comes back intact.
Man, that's why I made my point earlier about we need to get down linemen, because what we got on the second level and the third level of that defense, along with what we could have in the front, with the offense we gonna have.
Yeah, with everybody coming back on offense.
Man, y'all, man, that's scary.
Yeah, yeah. So with that said, Georgia closing that gap. I'm gonna be honest. We did a show earlier. I think it was after the South Carolina game, second week of the season. And I said Georgia is the new Alabama. It's Alabama light,
Right.
In how that team is built from the inside out.
Right.
We already talked about how line play is determining it. And they've only added to that today. Kirby on the defensive side of the ball is going all out.
He is.
Yeah. I'm gonna show the audience the top 5 recruits that they signed today, which are all 5 stars. Right. So you've got Nolan Smith, the number 1 weak side defensive end, so pass rusher, right? You got N'Kobe Dean, the number 1 inside linebacker out of Mississippi that they beat Alabama out for.
Right.
You got Trevon Walker, the number 2 defensive tackle in the country. And then Clay Webb, the number 1 offensive guard / center in the country that they got out of Oxford, Alabama, which we'll talk about that.
Okay.
And then the 5-star wide receiver, Dominic Blaylock out of Georgia. So when you start looking at, because Georgia's already a very, very young team.
Right.
Very young. And then you add this kind of talent on top of what they already have. Georgia's going to dominate the East for a while. Because as much as I like Dan Mullins at Florida, if he can't start recruiting at the Urban Meyer type level and bringing in that type of talent, I don't care how good of a coach he is, he's not going to beat Georgia year in, year out.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I thought, that he did a pretty good job this year, considering, it'll be his first true class.
It is.
Because I saw them just, kind of slowly as they were getting kids, man, just kind of slowly creeping up the rankings today. And I know they started off today at about somewhere around 20.
Mm-hmm.
And, after talking to you earlier, you said that they had finished at 16.
Yep.
21 commits. They didn't get any 5 stars, but they did get 13 4 stars in their class. And they have an average composite score of 89.8. So something that I heard earlier, which just to talk about Florida for a quick second, was when I was watching a lot of the coverage, was the kids that they're signing in this class, signing now, last year, or even next year, they were very young when Urban was winning.
Mm-hmm.
And so it talked about how Dan Mullen will have to, reestablish that culture because, the kids that are coming in now may or may not remember, Florida winning on that level.
Yeah, just to give an example of how long ago it was, Urban Meyer beat out Mike Shula for Tim Tebow.
Wow. Yeah.
That's
been a long time.
That was pre-Nick Saban.
Right.
So,
yeah. 12, 13 seasons ago? Somewhere in there?
Yeah. I think that was the 05 class.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
06 class. It's the
right. So those kids signing today are 5 years old.
5, 6 years old. Yeah.
Right. So they don't really remember that, man. They just remember being a Florida fan. Their family was a Florida fan or something like that, but
yeah.
But yeah, that was just I thought it was an interesting point.
Yeah. But Georgia is going to be the dominant team in the East for a while. I don't see that changing. At least in the West, you've got LSU. You've got Texas A&M, who we haven't talked about, having the number 3 class in the nation.
Right.
LSU has the number 4 class in the nation. The SEC, and not to mention Auburn with the number 10 class in the nation.
Right.
And so the SEC West for years to come is going to be difficult. It's going to be competitive. The East, not that it's going to be bad, but it's just not going to be on the same level. And so, but the way Georgia is recruiting, and stacking up talent, they're going to dominate the East. They're going to be in Atlanta just about every year, you know. But I'm super impressed with the talent they put in today. Nolan Smith, I'm gonna tell you about this kid, man. Doing his recruiting, he was trying to act like he was open, he was uncommitted, he didn't know, and he would talk about his top teams, right? And he would say, Clemson, I really like how they blah blah blah, but he would slip up every time he talked about Georgia. He would say we. Yeah, it's like you're not fooling anybody. Everybody knows you are a Georgia lock, and he was their biggest recruiter. He recruited a lot of these kids. N'Kobe Dean talked about on his recent visit to Georgia, it was Nolan Smith who was really like in his ear and was like, hey man, just come on, we can room together.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And so that whole experience and being alongside Nolan Smith is what convinced N'Kobe Dean to not come to Alabama and to go to Georgia. And so when you just look at the talent that Kirby is bringing in on the defensive side of the ball, is really impressive. And the only team that's going to be able to stand up to Georgia is going to be Alabama.
Right.
I still don't know how they lost at LSU by 20 points this year. Georgia should be in the playoff, but as far as today was a sign that nothing is going to change. And for the foreseeable future, it's going to be a Alabama-Georgia battle on the field and in recruiting.
That's right.
Yeah. That's right. Because Clay Webb, prime example. Now, a lot of people trying to spin the Clay Webb thing as if Kirby came into Alabama and just took Clay Webb from Alabama and Nick Saban. That's not really true. Clay Webb lives in Oxford, Alabama, true enough. Clay Webb is not an Alabama kid. Yeah. Number one center in the country. Kid is good. He's one of those kind of guys where on the interior line, he can really create space and push his guy off the ball. Just a good technician and really strong kid. Well, Clay Webb's grandparents live in Douglasville, Georgia.
Oh, okay.
And his aunt and uncle live in Athens, Georgia.
Well, there was never a chance.
Yeah. It was.
I ain't gonna say it was never a chance, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, but it really wasn't, because he actually, the reporter never put it out there until after he committed. But he had actually slipped up months ago and told this reporter that he was going to Georgia, because he talked about how his mom was going to retire and then get her retirement in Alabama and also find a job wherever he went to school. So that automatically meant he wasn't coming to Alabama.
I see.
You know what I'm saying? They were already making plans for her to retire, get her retirement check in the state, and then go out of state and get a job and double dip in her pay. Right. So he accidentally let that slip to a reporter, and good on the reporter for not divulging that or reporting that, but Clay Webb, regardless of the situation, was never going to Alabama. He's not an Alabama kid, and he was going out of state, whether that was Clemson or whether that was Georgia, but he ends up at Georgia, which is pretty amazing because Georgia has a very young offensive line. In the SEC championship game, they started a freshman at right guard. They've got a lot of young guys in that offensive line, but I don't know if Clay Webb is expecting to come in and play right away. But he is another quality offensive lineman, adding depth to what they already have.
And what probably will happen, he's as good as you're saying that he is, and as he's ranked to be. I don't know if he could play tackle or not, but he'll probably just be a plug and play type guy. maybe similar to Barrett Jones, the way Barrett Jones was for Alabama. You know, he may play center one year, he may play guard. You know, just depending on where he takes off. But you know, if one thing about young lions, a lot of times they don't gel, and if you got a guy that is as technical as you're saying, you know, he may be able to, like I said, just plug in a hole where they need it.
Absolutely. And he's not a guy that's going to be a tackle at the SEC level.
Right.
He's clearly an interior, but the center and either guard position, absolutely. And I think that's where he's going to end up. So did you have any takeaways from Georgia's class from what you've kind of seen or picked up on?
Well, you answered one of them, because I did want to know more about him, you know, especially him being from Oxford. And, you know, just wondering, you know, like, how did Kirby come in and get this guy? He was the only guy from Alabama in his recruiting class.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, there was just a few questions there. But, again, just kind of reiterating what you're saying. I mean, Georgia's got a great class. I mean, that's just the one takeaway that I have. They've got an awesome class. You know, more 5-stars than Bama, but again, you know, with the 22 4-stars that Alabama has, you know, of course, that's the edge that they have as far as having a better class. But I mean, again, Kirby's doing his thing. The gap is definitely, I mean, it's small. You know, when you say that he's closing it.
Yeah.
And everything will play out on the field.
Yes, it will. And speaking of playing out on the field, the person who loves to preach about letting it play out on the field, Mr. 13 playoff himself.
Amen. Absolutely. But I don't.
Hey, everybody, welcome Ashton Clark to the show. Ashton is our LSU fan, knows everything LSU, and self-proclaimed Bama hater.
Yeah. Not a huge Alabama fan, although they're better to me than Clemson. I don't know why I hate Clemson so much.
It's the orange, man.
It's terrible, ain't it?
Yeah. I mean, as a Bama fan, I get it. The Auburn, Tennessee, it's the orange.
It might be, but I don't hate Florida and Boise State like I hate them. I don't know.
All right, but man, welcome in. I wanted to bring you on because following recruiting, I was tied in Alabama this year. I followed Georgia pretty closely, but I was really shocked at how well LSU was doing this year.
Right.
We know Coach O is a good recruiter. Mm-hmm. So tell us about the class and just kind of your takeaways.
Okay, well, first off, I just want to say that I don't think that Les Miles was that great a recruiter. I think that Nick Saban, well, largely with the help of Nick Saban, LSU became a national brand, and LSU kind of recruits itself. It says, "Hey, I'm LSU, come play for me," and you know, other schools do that as well. Auburn, Alabama, Notre Dame, USC. Those schools kind of sell themselves, and so it didn't take the greatest recruiter of all time to step in and have a very good, you know, top 10 recruiting class, pretty much off the bat. So I just want to throw that out there. Ed Orgeron is a good recruiter, but I don't think he's a great recruiter. So I think that really helps LSU because they are a very high market team, a very legitimate program, and that's largely due to Nick Saban, rather. So. Just wanted to throw that out there. Got to give credit where credit is due. The recruiting class this year, I'm kind of excited about because LSU and their losses this year. I'm just going to go ahead and throw the Texas A&M debacle out the window. It didn't follow any rules. There's no really analyzing that game. It was just crazy and ridiculous. But if you look at their other losses to Alabama,
a 72-7 multi-overtime game isn't the norm in the SEC.
I don't think that's a norm anywhere. Maybe the Big 12 is close to that, but no, it's not a norm anywhere, and I don't think it followed any rules, and it should have been over in the first overtime. But yeah, so if we throw that loss out, then we look at the two losses that LSU had. Let's look at the Florida game and the Alabama game. What were the weaknesses really that LSU had? Well, defensively, they came out and they played lights out. I mean, they were the first team all year to hold Tua to less than 14 first half points. I mean, it was ridiculous, the veracity with which the defense played. And then Devin White comes back in the second half, and they do similarly in the second half, but the offense doesn't pick them up. And so I think that they fall off because of that. So Alabama does put up 29 points, and it doesn't look great on the defense, but the defense looked really solid. The offense didn't come to play, though. And if we look at the Florida game, the same can be said. Florida has a really good defense, and the LSU offense didn't come to play. So I really think that LSU's biggest weaknesses this season were on the offensive line. If you look at the Alabama game and the Florida game, the big problem wasn't a lack of run game. It wasn't a lack of experience. It wasn't a lack of anything to that degree. It was a lack of protection up front for Joe Burrow. So in games where Joe Burrow has time to throw, has time to set back, has time to set up in the pocket, he's really done progressively better throughout the season. Right? The only two hiccups were Florida and Alabama. Other than that, I don't think he threw an interception this year. I mean, the dude played lights out football. It wasn't pretty at the beginning of the season, and so that kind of fed into the narrative that LSU just has the worst quarterback in the country, which is somewhat earned. But yeah, so Joe Burrow really isn't a bad quarterback. He's a great leader, a very gritty player, and really settled into the position, except when you had a really good front seven lineup against him. So you can look at the Mississippi State game, the Alabama game, the Florida game, and LSU couldn't handle blitzes and pass rushes from top-level defenders. And so I'm super excited this year because we have some very, very good recruits on specifically the offensive line. Right. LSU has like the best running back in the country or some such. I don't know. I'm not really concerned about that in John Emery. I'm concerned about this guy, Cardell Thomas. Now, Cardell Thomas is he's coming out of Southern University Lab in Baton Rouge, and I looked at a lot of his huddle videos. Right. So I went on huddle.com and I watched a lot of his highlights, and something that I've noticed.
Just to stop you, that kid is huge.
Oh, he's ginormous.
He is huge. Offensive guard, 5-star kid, 6'3", 356.
Dude is ginormous. Dude, that's SEC size, right?
Yeah.
So I'm excited to have him come. And watching his videos, something that I noticed is he's not the best rush blocker. But that's okay because LSU is. LSU can successfully run the ball, or if they have a weak guard or tackle, they can successfully direct, run counters, run to the other opposite side. It doesn't matter. What I'm super excited about is this kid's ability to pass block, because if you watch his highlights, I couldn't find a problem with his footwork when he's pass blocking. I couldn't find a problem with anything that he did. He absolutely redirects everybody away from the pocket so that the quarterback can step up into the pocket and make the throw and deliver the pass. The dude's pass blocking fills one of the biggest needs that LSU has. Another thing to look at is let me see if I can't find him. There's Anthony Bradford, who's another 4-star guard, and he's even bigger. He's 6'5", 355. And then you go on down, we get Thomas Perry, who's a 3-star tackle. And that 3-star rating is a little bit misleading, right? So you would think, oh, he's not that great, but watching him on the field, he's dominant, just a dominant player. And I'm super excited about those guys and the tackle that we're getting from Ruston, Ray Parker. He's a 6'5", 250 offensive tackle, and I'm hoping that he can beef up a little bit. He played majority of his snaps that I saw were at tight end, but his blocking ability is just next level. And so I'm super excited about all of the strides that we've taken to fill the gaps on the offensive line, and having the running back come in and other running backs come in is just the icing on top. Like I would love to see this kid run behind these guys. And I watched a few of his videos, and it was very reminiscent of watching Leonard Fournette in high school. The kid's just very, very good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to say it's very ironic that you mentioned that strong suit, because before we came on air, Randall and I were talking, and I was saying about LSU's class, about the difference between LSU 2011 and prior and LSU since. has been the ability or the inability to dominate up front.
That's right.
You know, we could talk about receivers. We could talk about quarterbacks. They haven't had the elite quarterback. LSU's never had an elite quarterback. They were always able to dominate up front in the run game. And it started with the offensive line.
Yeah.
And for the last 5-6 years, you have not had LSU have offensive linemen draft high in the draft.
That's
they
absolutely
just produced them. And so when I looked at this class, I was like, okay, so they got a 5-star guard, 2 4-star tackles. I was like, this is what LSU needs to get back to that level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're filling needs for the first time in years. And I'm excited about it. You know, it's great to have receivers and dual threat quarterbacks and running backs come in, but they do not a team make. So when you have your quarterback step back into the pocket to throw, you know, he's taking his 3-step drop, and your 5-star quarterback is taking his 3-step drop to throw to your 5-star wide receiver who's running a slant route. But if you have a bunch of 1- and 2-star linemen blocking, it doesn't matter because the quarterback's throwing off his back foot every time. And it doesn't matter how great your receiver is, he's throwing it to the corner. So you've got a lot of problems up front. And I don't think that our problems have necessarily been in the run game. So we haven't been dominant up front. I'll grant you that. But if you watch LSU's success offensively this year, they weren't overly successful in the run game. When they did well, I think particularly of the Georgia game, there were a lot of these 10-yard and in routes that Joe Burrow hit every time. And I really think that's the difference between Georgia and Alabama. Georgia doesn't have that just absolutely overwhelmingly dominant front seven. So Burrow had time to throw.
Georgia's working on it.
Oh, I know they are. I know they are. But this season, I think that's the difference between Georgia and Alabama. And I think that's why Alabama wins that game, because it really didn't matter at the end of that game whether Jalen Hurts comes in or not. The Alabama offensive line was able to handle everybody. And so toward the end of the game, they figure out the defensive schemes, figure out protections, and they get the ball down the field. So I think that's the difference between Georgia and Alabama. And if you watch LSU in that game versus Georgia, their success wasn't on the ground. Their success was passing it on 3rd and long, right? If you go back to the greatest LSU offense ever fielded, right, with Jeremy Hill and Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry and Zach Mettenberger. If you go back to that offense, they weren't this great ground and pound offense. They weren't super dominant up front back in 2013. They were just very, very good and efficient in the passing game. So I'm okay with not being the most dominant offensive line in the country. We just have to be able to pass block to be successful. And if this year's defense is on 2013's team with that offense, we're a national championship team. Also, if Joe Burrow comes out against Alabama and isn't intimidated off the field.
Whoa. Now, Joe Burrow talked a lot about not being scared. He wasn't scared. Don't say that man was intimidated.
He talked a lot about it, but if you watch him play, man, that's a different quarterback than came out against Georgia. That was completely different.
Yeah,
you got to admit that.
Yeah, I will. But I will say this too. The one thing that Nick Saban did when he came to LSU, everybody knew LSU was a sleeping giant. It was a matter of whether you could keep recruits in state.
That's right.
And that's what Nick Saban did.
That's right.
And that's one thing I noticed about this class. They have 9 guys from the state of Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
And they got 4 of the top 5 guys in the state to stay home. And that's big.
Right. Well, I mean, even Alabama comes to Louisiana a lot to recruit. The last time that I really paid attention to the recruiting trail was back when Leonard Fournette and Speedy Noel were being recruited by LSU. And Speedy Noel is in this recruiting battle between A&M and LSU, and nobody knew where he was going to go, but that's another Louisiana kid. And you had Speedy Noel, who was the #1 receiver in the country, Malachi Dupree, who was the #1 or #2 receiver in the country, and Leonard Fournette, all in the same class, all from Louisiana. So I don't know what it is about the state. Maybe it's the water. I don't know. But it just produces great athletic talent, and I don't know why. And Alabama and Nick Saban rather had learned that at LSU, and he's tapping into that at Alabama. Like, make no mistake, West Monroe High School has fielded more Alabama players than I think any other high school in the country.
Hey, I agree. After this past Alabama LSU matchup, LSU fans were complaining about how many key Alabama players were from Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's what I'm saying. So this year, and actually, it's not just 4 of the top 5. 5 of the top 6 players in the state, you got to stay home at LSU.
Right.
Alabama didn't come down and rip them out from you. You know,
right.
And that's what you need, a couple of years of that type of recruiting to get back to being the LSU of old.
Well, another thing that I've noticed with this class is I'm seeing a couple Alabama kids coming to LSU, and for whatever reason that may be, right? We can joke about they're not good enough to make it at Auburn and Alabama, so they come to LSU. But there really is something there. There's this idea that Alabama, they win it all every year, and it's almost boring. So they want to go. I think that this is the logic behind a bunch of these kids' thought pattern. I want to go to a team where I can build something, right? Where my name is remembered and I'm not just one in another long chain of players. So I would rather be, for example, I'd rather be Tyrann Mathieu than Clinton Dix.
What?
Well, because Louisiana remembers Tyrann Mathieu. Clinton Dix was just another great Alabama safety, right? Nobody remembers him independently of everybody else on that defense, right? Because that's one of the best defenses ever. Tyrann Mathieu, though, he's a Heisman candidate at safety, right? And that's because he was such a dynamic player that it didn't matter who else was on the field at LSU. He was the star. You can't be a superstar at Alabama. You just can't.
But you get rings.
I know. I'm aware.
Okay. All right.
There's kids that have gotten rings at certain points at LSU too, and I'll never forgive Iowa State for stealing rings from us in 2011. Never, it'll never happen.
that is true. Iowa State did do that for you.
They absolutely did.
But those not tracking, Iowa State upset Oklahoma State, which allowed Alabama to get back into the top 2 of the BCS, and then therefore beat LSU in the national championship game.
And LSU would have curb stomped Oklahoma State. It would have been great. But no, we don't get to see that with one of the greatest defenses ever fielded destroying Oklahoma State. No, we just have to endure Les Miles' ridiculousness on offense for another 4 years. So
and just for the record, none of the 3 guys you signed for Alabama had Alabama offers, just so you know.
Yeah, that's what I said at the beginning, right? They're not good enough to play at Alabama or Auburn, so they go to
they're good enough for Auburn. They're good enough for
Auburn. Another thing, this kid from Alabama, let me see if I can't find him. Peter Parrish from Phoenix City, Alabama.
That kid's good.
Yeah, he's a quarterback, and I don't love that pickup. And that's because historically, if you look at LSU's great quarterbacks, the ones that have done very, very good, since Nick Saban has left, those guys are not dual threat quarterbacks, right? You have Anthony Jennings come in, and he's more of a pocket passer type guy, but he doesn't have the nerves to stand in the pocket and throw. He had one great game after Zach Mettenberger went down with the injury, and he leads the comeback against Arkansas in 2013. But after that, he kind of peters out. Then you have Brandon Harris, who's maybe one of the more athletic dudes on the field, but he's not a great quarterback for LSU's system. And so he looks terrible. And then he goes to, I think, North Carolina or some such and looks fantastic because the system fit. So I don't like the picking up dual threat guys at LSU because the system is so skewed away from that.
Yeah.
Right. Lane Kiffin came to Alabama and changed that for Alabama, but nobody has come in to LSU and changed that for us. Right. Yeah. We still need the game managers.
And I will say this. I like it from the standpoint of I think the kid is talented, and I don't know if he stays at quarterback.
Right. Yeah. I watched a couple of his highlights, and he's the fastest kid on the field.
Yeah. So I don't know if he stays at quarterback, but what I don't like is he's the only quarterback you sign
in the class. Yeah.
In the class. Now, you got until February to find someone else.
Yeah.
But LSU needs to be in on top guys because you only have right now 2 scholarship quarterbacks.
That I'm aware.
Yeah, Joe Burrow and was it Brennan?
Miles Brennan.
Miles Brennan. Yeah, those are the only 2 scholarship quarterbacks you have because the other 2 transferred out.
Right. But if you look at the better quarterbacks of yesteryear, since the Nick Saban era, rather, the best quarterbacks have been transfers, right? Zach Mettenberger from Georgia, and then Burrow from where was it? Ohio State, Penn State. There's some school up north. So I'm not super worried. I think it's kind of funny. It's like LSU is admitting we can't develop a quarterback, so we'll let somebody else do it for us and then get them to come and play for us. But I do hope that changes. I hate it. I hate the fact that we can't develop a quarterback. And so quarterbacks don't want to come to LSU, right? The only quarterbacks who want to come to LSU are the superstars who can't be tackled on a high school field. So they come to LSU and they think, oh, I'm going to be the superstar who can't be tackled on a college field. And that's just never how it works out.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely been a lack of development of the quarterback position.
Absolutely.
Hey, I got a question for Ashton. What do you think of the chances that Justin Fields come there?
To LSU. Baton Rouge?
Yeah.
I honestly don't love the chances of that happening. I don't think that's one of his top teams. I would think that Arkansas or a school like that would be higher on the list because, like I say, there's just not a system for dual threat guys. And Justin Fields could come to Baton Rouge and be the most successful quarterback that we've ever seen, but I don't see it happen necessarily. So really, I think that Justin Fields is going to go to some place where he can be a superstar, and he's going to, right? No matter where he goes, he's going to be one of the top guys in the country next year or whenever he can play. That's 2 years from now, right?
Before the show started, I saw that March ESPN was reporting that Justin Fields is highly considering transferring to Ohio State.
Yeah. So Big 10 or Big 12 or something like that, that makes sense, right? Yeah. So somewhere where he can go and the system fits. And I don't know why pocket quarterbacks don't come to LSU because that's the system, right? You don't have to be a great quarterback. Danny Etling proved that. You don't have to be a great quarterback to be successful at LSU. You just got to play with heart, know what's going on, and manage the game. And that's it, right? Which is the recipe that Alabama had for so long with John Parker Wilson. And even Greg McElroy wasn't this fantastic quarterback. He was smart. He understood the game. He stood in the pocket and he managed it, right? He's just a field coach, basically. And how many rings did those guys win? I mean, that's basically the system that you have at LSU. And now with these guys, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that we can protect the quarterback. And, you'll have a guy like Joe Burrow or like Miles Brennan stand in the pocket and be able to complete those passes downfield like we had in 2013. So, that's my hope. I don't think that Justin Fields comes to Baton Rouge. I don't know why that would happen. It's like, hey, I play at Georgia where we lose to Alabama every year. Might want to go to LSU where they lose to Alabama every year. That just doesn't follow. But go into the Big 12 to the Big 10, somewhere that fits, somewhere where he can spend a year, learn the system, and just plug in and play. Getting in those shootouts would be appealing to somebody who's really, really good at what they do and wants to be a superstar, wants to make a name for themselves for a NFL draft stock. And let's just be honest. Alabama quarterbacks and LSU quarterbacks and Arkansas quarterbacks don't have high draft stock historically, right? You're probably not going to go to the NFL. If we look at what was his name, Matt Mock, who won that national championship with Saban in what he did after school? He went and became a dentist. Yeah, right?
Yeah, that's typical. The two quarterbacks you have win national championships was Matt Mock and John David Booty.
And Matt Flynn, right?
No, Matt Flynn. That's who it was. Matt Flynn.
Yeah. So these guys, they're not great quarterbacks. They're system quarterbacks, and that's fine, right? But I don't understand why the system quarterbacks of the high school level don't look at a place like LSU and say, you know what, I could be successful there. The only guys that we get are dual threat quarterbacks who keep beating their head against a brick wall saying, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make this work. And it never works.
I think it's because your coaching staff that keeps going out to dual threat guys thinking that's what they want.
Hey man, I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just frustrating.
Yeah. I get you.
I hate it so much. It's like they don't understand what they have.
Yeah.
And that was the problem for years and years with Les Miles. He didn't understand what he had. And so we piddled away year after year after year, games that we should have won. I mean, look at all the games that we should have won that we didn't. I'm not even talking about the Alabama losses. I'm talking about like Ole Miss, Arkansas, those teams, the teams that we should have beat that we couldn't consistently beat. So, you know, I'm hoping that we don't fall into those patterns. I'm excited about the line moves, and I'm super excited. Like, I don't know how I could be more excited about the defensive pickups. We have one of the top corners, I think, in the country coming to LSU.
Yeah, he's a Louisiana kid, 5-star kid.
Yeah. What's his name? Stingley. Derek Stingley. He's the national number 3 overall prospect, the number 1 at his position, and the number 1 in the state. I mean, that's amazing. And then we have this athlete. Let me see if I can't find him. Ray Darius Jones, who committed not very long ago, but he's committed as a corner, a 4-star kid out of Mississippi. And there's just all kinds of pickups in the secondary. There's a 3-star kid out of Alabama, Cordell Flott. And, you know, it just goes on and on and on. We pick up linebackers, safeties. I love it. I love our defensive ability to recruit. And I'm hoping that translates to success on the field, because defensively we're consistently one of the top teams in the country. And like I say, I'm hoping that continues, and we can start protecting the quarterback and maybe put up, 21 or 24 points against the Alabama team that puts up 29.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say this for those who are listening, there are many different recruiting services out there. I like to use the 24/7 composite rankings because it is a combination of their rankings, Rivals, ESPN, and Scouts. So the major services, you put them all together and they come out with hey, this is where these guys rank according to all the services and then where the teams rank. So that's what we're looking at now. The top 5 classes, according to 247's composite rankings, and 4 of the top 5 are SEC schools. Yeah. So Randall, what's your initial takeaway from that?
College football lives in the South, man. I mean, just that simple. For me, just but I mean, the SEC will continue to be dominant going forward. These 4 teams are. Well, definitely those top 2 are currently in the championship picture. LSU has been there, and they're trying to get back there, and that's why they're doing what they're doing. And Texas A&M, hey, they've got a national championship coach who's going to bring that pedigree to Texas A&M, and so you're already seeing it right here in the results from the recruiting from this class, his first true class as well. So. Shout out to Oregon, for finishing 5th. Cristobal is doing pretty well over there. Another assistant from the Saban tree, so his impact is being shown there. But again, like I said, man, college football lives in the South, man, and this reflects it.
Hey, agree 100%. Another thing I'll point out, I mentioned it earlier. 3 teams from the SEC West in the top 4 in recruiting in the entire country. So, yeah. So for the foreseeable future, you're talking about, as an Alabama fan, I'm looking at the fact that A&M and LSU is on our schedule every year. Those games aren't going to get any easier.
Right.
Auburn currently is 10th in the rankings, and that's in one division. So go ahead, Ashton.
Well, I just wanted to point out, like Randall said, I mean, football lives in the South. I mean, particularly if you look at by state, Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, and Florida, right? And California is there too, but it's not to the same degree. So if you put California up against the South as a whole, then the South has more talent, more consistent talent. And speaking of California, I was looking for this article that I saw earlier that I believe it was ESPN put out talking about the biggest losers of the day. So,
Yeah,
so who were the biggest
article? But yeah, that was an ESPN article. I saw it.
Yeah. So the biggest losers, they said, I can't remember who all. I think it was Miami and Florida State and UCLA and USC.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
we can talk about Florida State. Florida State had a horrible day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, not only did Francois announce that he's more than likely leaving, but then they had a quarterback decommit. They had I think it was an offensive lineman or defensive lineman decommit. I mean, their class right now is pretty bad.
All right, but let's not pretend that DeAndre Swift, Francois leaving might not be the best thing that happens for Florida State.
But no, Francois is not the problem of Florida State. Florida State's problem is their offensive line has been horrible for 3 years.
Yeah, it has. Absolutely.
And unfortunately, they didn't address it with this recruiting class, so it's only going to get worse. I mean,
I'll be quite honest with you, man. It wasn't that great when Jameis was there.
Yeah.
You're right. Jameis was running for his life.
Yeah. I mean, you go back and watch that Oregon game in the playoff, the first year of the playoff.
Yeah.
They were at him.
True.
Right.
And if you go back, look at Francois' first year, man, he was getting lit up in the pocket, but he was making throws.
And he was like,
in the second year, they play Alabama opening game, and he gets hurt in the fourth quarter.
Well, that killed him there, right? Because if Francois lives through that game, right, if he survives that game, then he's better for it. But because he got dominated the way that he did, I think he threw like 3 or 4 interceptions, and then got hurt. I mean that's enough to destroy a quarterback's confidence altogether. Like, he's done. He's done at that point. There's nothing. There's no coming back. There's no making it better. And so when he comes back from the injury, he's not the same quarterback that got injured. So really,
he Alabama might not be, but he's behind that same offensive line that is horrible.
Yeah, you're right. But when you look at I like to do this. I like to look at the winners and losers on a conference basis.
Okay.
Right? So the winners of the day, if we just look at the rankings that you just put up, right? The winners are obviously SEC West teams, right? And with the exception of Florida and Georgia, those two had a great day, right? Florida comes into the day and they are looking bad, and then by the time everything's over, they're sitting pretty at, I think, 18. Just it's amazing the turnaround. So the SEC is doing better this year than I think years past, and I don't know how that's possible, right? The best conference continues to get better, and people will say, "Oh, the SEC isn't the best conference." They have the best talent year in and year out, and a lot of the best coaching. I mean, we can argue about who's better, top to bottom in the Big Ten. Would Urban Meyer beat Nick Saban, or you have Mark Stoops or Kirby Smart against Mark D'Antonio or Jim Harbaugh? Like, you can argue that, but the talent level is not the same, and that's why Mark D'Antonio couldn't beat Alabama in the playoff. That's why Jim Harbaugh can't win the big games. That's why when we have these interconference games, they lose. Michigan had a really good day as well, so it's interesting to see the top of the Big Ten do well. The top of the Pac-12 does well, right, with Oregon. And then all of the rest of them do poorly. You have the ACC looking terrible. I didn't even see Clemson. I don't know where Clemson is.
Clemson is at number 6.
Number 6. And they haven't missed a playoff in how many years? I mean,
this is year 3 in a row.
3 in a row.
In a row. I mean, why are they getting beat on the recruiting field by A&M and LSU? Why is that happening?
Yeah.
Right. So the ACC is doing very, very poorly. They're having a down year anyway. Right. The only good team in the ACC is Clemson, and I'll make the argument, and I have in years past or in days past, that Clemson and the SEC would do the same thing as Kentucky. And if you look at the Pac-12,
I know, right, man.
I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
hey. So this, I like the fact you're on the roll. I mean, you preaching. You preaching right now. I'm about to start saying amen. But this is my question to you, and I want to have a long discussion on this.
Okay.
If everything you're saying is true, and it is true, why did you advocate for a 32-team playoff? Why do we need that? We don't need that. You just made the case for why we don't need it.
Because it would still be the most exclusive playoff in all of football. and it would shut up teams like UCF. It would shut up everybody because you would see LSU and Alabama and Georgia and A&M and Auburn in the top 8 at the end of the year, right? So a 4-loss LSU team is still better than the Big Ten champion. That's a truism. A 3-loss LSU is still better than Clemson.
And I still don't see why that means we need an expanded playoff field when you just made the argument that these teams from all over the country aren't even equal.
Right.
So why do we need a huge playoff field to determine a national champion when we play a 12-game season, a 13-game season when you consider a conference championship game?
You know, I remember somebody saying they wanted the best teams on the field.
Yeah.
Seems to me like that would be SEC teams at the end of the year, regardless of how many losses they have.
No, we're not going to go there. Because Ohio State has tons of talent.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Oklahoma's got a ton of talent.
That's right. So Ohio State.
But you know who I don't need to see in the playoff?
What's that?
I don't need to see 5-loss Pitt and 4-loss Northwestern. I don't need to see 3-loss Washington in a playoff.
Okay, then I don't understand why this is a problem, because at every other level in football, you have teams playing for a playoff bid, and now we have teams playing for bowl eligibility so that they can go and play in the Belk Bowl or whatever. Right?
But
they have nothing to play for.
A playoff wouldn't change that, though, because the team that's playing for eligibility to get into a bowl game, they're trying to get to 6 wins.
That's right.
So a playoff still win. Those teams would still be playing to try to get in bowl games.
Some of them would, right? But not all of them, because the bowl games don't matter anymore. So if we cut out the bowl games, then I think there's how many 80-something bowl games, or I don't know.
No, it's not that many. It's like 30-something.
Okay, so let's say I think it's 34. So that's 68 teams playing, and then plus one, because one of those is the national championship on top of the bowls. So let's say that we have 70 teams playing. Why is that better than a 32-team playoff where you'd have 32 teams and then a progressive bracket that makes it better and better and better and better?
Because what you're doing is you're devaluing the entire regular season. So me being number 1 and being undefeated through the regular season, my reward is I got to go play 4 or 5 more games just to get to the team I really need to play in the first place.
Right, with home field advantage, and you start out with the 32 seed. Like the 32 seed comes to your house, and you basically have a glorified practice. Whereas,
but you already complained about me playing that game in the regular season. When I played Colorado State, you like, we need to see this game. But now all of a sudden you want it to be a playoff game.
That's fair. I might have complained about that, but I don't complain about Alabama's strength of schedule as a whole. Right? Once they play LSU and Texas A&M, I'm fine. Right. Yeah. Before that point, I don't think it's fair to say they're the best team.
The games you're advocating for in the playoff are the games we already complained about in the regular season.
Sure. Some of them.
Why do we need to see them again in a playoff?
Why do we need to see Tom Brady play the wild card winner?
The NFL is only 32 teams, and the NFL is on parity.
You're right. And almost a third of those, or more than a third of those, get into the playoffs.
If you can make it to where Vanderbilt gets the top pick of the 5 stars, and Alabama has to take 3 stars this year and create parity between the teams, then yeah. But as long as the top teams constantly reload with the top players, you're not creating parity throughout college through 130 teams.
Right.
So why do I need to see a team that has already lost 4 or 5 games in the season and shown they're not elite play a team that is undefeated or have 1 loss throughout the season?
Because what happens if they win? Like that's rating. People want to see that. People would pay to see that. People would pay for that to happen. They want that to happen. As it stands, we have Clemson versus Ohio State versus Oklahoma versus Alabama every year.
But that wouldn't change. That's the problem. The FCS has a 2014 playoff. And you know what? The top 3 seeds win it every year.
Yep. And that would be easier to swallow than the top 3 seeds being the only ones to get.
Essentially, what you're saying is let's change college football as we know it, only to get to the same result we're getting to now.
Yes. That is what I'm saying. Man, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't care to sugarcoat it because I don't want the committee determining who their favorite 4 teams are to win the national championship. And that's what this is. The committee picks their favorite 4 to win the national championship, and everybody else gets left out. So it could legitimately be the case that Georgia is better.
Everybody who gets left out put themselves out.
Okay, no, then now we're not talking about the best team, because it could legitimately be the case that Georgia is a better team than Oklahoma. I think that's a very strong case that can be made.
It's not a strong case.
It's a strong case.
I can say Oklahoma's not losing by 20 to LSU. I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, that's my point. Every team that left out pit themselves out. Georgia, the Alabama loss didn't pit Georgia out. Losing at Baton Rouge by 20 pit Georgia out. So
I don't like that. The week 6 determines the end of the season, determines the best team in the country.
Absolutely.
I don't think that's
week 1 can determine that.
So now we're not talking about the best teams. We're talking about the team that got cold at the wrong time instead of the team that got hot.
No, we're not talking about the team that got cold.
Yep.
The best teams are the teams that have been the best throughout the entire season.
So that Georgia team that took the field against LSU was the same Georgia team that took the field against Alabama.
Absolutely.
There was no change, no difference in anything.
And this is what I would say. The only difference is they play Alabama in Atlanta and they play LSU in Baton Rouge. That Georgia team is the same Georgia team that went to a hostile environment last year at Auburn and had the same result, got blown out. They just don't do well in hostile environments. They're the same team. And if they came to Tuscaloosa, they get blown out by 3 touchdowns. But because they're playing in Atlanta on a neutral field in a friendly environment, they play well.
But it's a bold statement to say that Oklahoma would fare better in Tuscaloosa.
Right. Based on what we've seen, no matter where Oklahoma is gone, as bad as their defense is, their offense has been good everywhere. They haven't had they've been consistent. And that's the thing. Georgia wasn't consistent.
I mean, a loss to Texas, we're saying is better than a loss to LSU.
A 3-point last-second field goal loss to Texas on a neutral field is better than a 3-point loss. I mean, a 3-touchdown loss
to one of the top 10 teams in the country. But Texas is a middle of the pack team.
What's middle of the pack?
I'm talking about middle of the pack in the top 25. Like they're number 20 or 22 in my mind. I don't know where they're actually ranked. But
that's what I'm saying. No, they're actually not too far behind where LSU is at the moment.
Well, who would you say is better than Texas or LSU?
It really just depends. I would probably lean LSU, but you and I both know it depends on how consistent LSU is going to be on offense.
So you're saying that LSU could be a different team this week than they are next week?
Yeah, because LSU is inconsistent.
Okay. So why couldn't Georgia be inconsistent this year?
That's what I said, and I said Oklahoma was consistent. That's the difference in the teams. Okay. But anyway, aside from the arguing, because I don't think that either of us is going to change the other one's mind. What I was saying earlier is if you look at the draft, the recruiting classes, rather, I can't get draft class out of my mind. But if you look at the recruiting classes for the Pac-12, particularly, the Pac-12 is hurting, right? Besides Oregon, the Pac-12 is becoming the Group of 6 conference, right? They really are. Stanford went from having Andrew Luck and Christian McCaffrey to, man, they're not super good anymore. Like I don't see them making another Rose Bowl in the next 5 years. Then you have teams like Washington who are looking pretty good, but Jake Browning's only going to stay there so long, and when they play SEC teams, and you can argue that the traveling and the distance and all that makes a difference, and it probably does. But when they play teams from the SEC, middle of the pack teams from the SEC, like Auburn, then they get beat. And I don't understand. I don't understand why that's the case necessarily. But the top of the Pac-12 is the middle of the pack in the SEC, and the poor are getting poorer, right? If you look at the ACC as a whole and the Pac-12 as a whole, they are falling way behind the SEC and the Big Ten, and I don't know where the Big 12 stands. I haven't seen any Big 12 teams. Yeah,
I think the Pac-12 will continue to go as USC goes, and until they get that fixed, as far as from that program fixed, then what is the luster and the lore of the Pac-12? I mean, Oregon, it's not Chip Kelly's Oregon, that was playing for national championships and running up the score on people. I mean, Washington isn't. It's a good program, but it's not a sexy pick.
Right.
It's not a sexy program. And I honestly thought Clay Helton was going to get fired after this past season, and then they would try to make a splash hire. But that's just my opinion. I think the Pac-12 will go as USC either is up or down.
Yeah. Every conference needs their blue blood programs to be good.
Right.
And USC needs to be good for the Pac-12.
And UCLA needs to come back as well.
Absolutely.
And Chip Kelly had a bad year, y'all. Like it was sad to watch because you look at his offenses of yesteryear, right? You have Marcus Mariota and what was his name? Darren Thomas at quarterback and LaMichael James at running back. And y'all, that was my favorite team. Like it was cool. Yeah. It was before I had really become an LSU fan. Like I was a hardcore Oregon bandwagoner, right? At like 11 or 12. And like that was a cool team. And you talk about a sexy pick, like Oregon was that school. And they had a new uniform every time they come out, and it was cool. Now their uniforms look like glow sticks, and they come out and they don't have the same talent. They don't have the same swagger. They don't have the same anything, right? And Oregon, USC, UCLA, they're all looking down. But Oregon somehow has pulled out a great recruiting class. And I don't understand why the rest of the conference is doing so poorly.
Well, Mario Cristobal is from the Saban coaching tree. He was Alabama's offensive line coach. He went out to Oregon. They made him the head coach eventually, and now he's always been a great recruiter. He started out at Miami. He's a great recruiter, and so that's what it takes. The difference between the Pac-12 and you say the SEC, the reason Washington struggles and the reason they couldn't compete with Alabama and the reason they couldn't beat Auburn is at the line of scrimmage. They have receivers, they have skill players. It's the line of scrimmage they can't complete. They can't compete, right? And that's not changing based on how the SEC and the teams in the South are recruiting versus how they're recruiting. They're trying to recruit these small, under the radar type players and develop them over time.
Right. And I've analyzed the games and I've seen how Washington gets dominated at the line of scrimmage and how other teams from the Pac-12, be it UCLA or Oregon or whoever, gets dominated at the line of scrimmage. What I'm wondering is, with California having so many powerhouse 6A football teams in high school, why can't they have offensive linemen? I mean, they're one of the hotbeds of college talent, and they can't recruit offensive linemen. They can't win a line of scrimmage. And really, since Casey Matthews at Oregon, there hasn't been this fantastic Pac-12 defensive player, right? Yeah. They don't have solid defenses, and they can't win the line of scrimmage, and I don't know why, right? And I'm not saying that they can't win the line of scrimmage, but I don't know, how they're getting dominated by teams like Auburn and Alabama. I'm saying I don't know why they're so small on the line.
Yeah,
right.
Because the exception to the rule was always Stanford, right? And Stanford has even gone down in that area of good offensive lines. I don't know. It's got to be a recruiting thing. It's got to be a talent bed and style of play thing.
It's got to be.
That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, that's really strange. That's a good point. I mean, they used to be known for going in there and getting the big Samoans and some of those type guys to play on the offensive line.
And that's another thing. Now Hawaiians are not playing in the Pac-12. They're playing at Alabama.
Yeah. At other places,
one of the best offensive linemen for Oklahoma is Samoan.
Right, and one of the best defensive linemen for LSU. I mean, they come all the way over to the SEC country because the Pac-12 is so bad at recruiting now.
And I'm going to tell you right now, the Pac-12 does not pay coaches. They don't pay coaches well. And when you don't pay head coaches well, guess what? You're not paying assistants well. Right. And so these really good assistants and these really good recruiters, they're not in the Pac-12. They're in the ACC. They're in the places where these coaches, the head coach is making $7 million and the coordinators are making $2 million, and the assistant coaches are making, $700,000.
Right.
Whereas I believe Chris Wilcox at Cal, the head coach, is making $1.5 million.
Right.
It's a religion in the South, man. I mean,
it really is.
That's the difference.
It really, and that's not necessarily to our credit, right? LSU at every home game they read off this it's Saturday night in Death Valley speech, and at one point in the speech it is the cathedral of college football and worship happens here, and it's like, gosh, I wish that statement wasn't so true, because it's the biggest source of idolatry in the South. It really is, but at the same time, like it's so fun because it brings the whole South together. So there's this fellowship, maybe in what can be a false religion, but there's this great amount of fellowship coming together, saying, look, this is who we are. And like I've heard of reasons for this, or this, that, or that. I don't think that any of them are really hitting the nail on the head, but the South really does do football differently. Right. There's something different about high school football in the South than in, say, North Dakota. Right.
Right.
And another thing that I would like to point out, and this just kind of came to me as we were talking, y'all are saying like there's a different play style in those big high schools, and that's true. Have y'all seen the Netflix series, the quarterback thing, where it follows Jake Fromm and a couple others?
No, I haven't seen it.
I mean, either.
I think it's Quarterback One or something like that, and then something about lights. I don't know, but like it goes through Jake Fromm making his progressions, like he's learning the playbook, like you're watching Friday Night Lights. It's like a real life Friday Night Lights, and they're discussing the playbook, and they're going through their plays, and it shows Jake Fromm's high school, and it's this huge place, right? It's unbelievably big, and I'm a dude who graduated with 150 people. Right. But I went to a little bitty high school, and seeing this stuff, it's unbelievable. But the way that they play football, it shows a couple of clips, is so much different than it is here that, I mean, it's hard to imagine that California is any different. So here we line up and we're in a double tight, double wing, or a split back veer. We snap the ball and we run about 3 yards, and then we get tackled, and then we huddle, and then we go back to the line of scrimmage and we run about 3 yards, and we huddle, and we go back to the line of scrimmage, and we run about 3 yards, and that's football in Louisiana.
And then you punt.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of going for it on 4th and 1. So, but that's football in Louisiana. And then you have the big running backs come out of Louisiana from those systems. Like, y'all have heard of John Curtis, right? The great,
yeah.
Like, do you know their offensive scheme?
I don't.
They've won like 150, it's not actually, they've won like 30 state championships since their inception in like 1970. So just unbelievable. They're so talented, but their offensive system in football is a split back veer. There's nothing special about it. There's nothing flashy about it. There's nothing overtly really catching about their offense, but it's perfect. It's efficient. You don't have to have the best players to run it, and so it works. And then you go to these other places, and that produces great offensive linemen, great running backs, and great game managers, right? And then you go to these other places like California or Georgia, or where the high schools are bigger and faster and stronger, and they run spread offenses, and they don't know how to run between the tackles. So I do think that might have something to do with it.
One thing we do know, California is very good at producing quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
And skilled players. But it's right. that the line of scrimmage is where they suffer at developing players.
That's right. They can win any 7-on-7, right? I would put the Pac-12 up against anybody in 7-on-7. Yeah. But we're not playing 7-on-7. This is 11-on-11 football, and you have to win the line of scrimmage to win the game.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. No matter what style of play.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So recruiting recap, takeaways. Alabama finished with the top class so far. We still got the official signing in February.
Right.
Let's see if LSU adds a quarterback. They need to add a quarterback.
Yeah, they do. I agree. Preferably a pocket passer. Fingers crossed.
He's going to be dual threat.
I know. Yes. I know it. I know. And then we'll have a transfer come in and force the dual threat guy to transfer out of LSU because that's what happens.
Yeah. The SEC dominates the top 10 again.
Again.
Yeah, it just happens every year. And
Right.
I don't know, that's in Alabama. Oh yeah, and Alabama and Georgia are going to be battling from here on out on the field and off the field and recruiting, because Nick and Kirby are going after the same type of guys. And
yeah, they are.
And they're both great recruiters. And these kids are so confused coming down to the wire as to who to choose. It's built for great drama, but I'm getting too old. I'm getting too old for this drama.
Speaking of that, what did you think about the kid who flipped to Michigan?
We talked about that. Dax Hill, it was really a case where we think that he thought Harbaugh might go pro, and so he started to second guess his commitment to Michigan. But I think Harbaugh was able to convince him that he was going to stay put, and so he decided to sign with Michigan. I just hate he didn't let us know ahead of time.
Right. Okay. Real quick though, Harbaugh, why can't he win the Big Ten? Like, look, what's the deal? He has the teams to do it. He has the talent, but it seems like every time he gets in these big games, he chokes
because he still has less talent than Urban Meyer. And you saw that when it comes to speed. Ohio State had way more speed than Michigan.
That's true. They did.
And also, Harbaugh, like an idiot, ran his mouth about how they were going to beat Ohio State. and you took a team that's more talented than you, that was sleepwalking through the season, and you woke them up. And that's what he did, because he ran his mouth.
That's fair. But even going into halftime, right, that was anybody's game. Right, Michigan didn't look bad until midway through the third quarter.
Well, yeah, they were able to score some points, but Ohio State from opening jump was scoring on them on that defense, and it's because they just don't have the speed.
Right.
You know, I mean, they've got NFL guys up front, and they got some guys in the secondary that's going to play in the NFL. But as a team, overall speed, they were clearly lacking.
Well, that was the big thing with y'all remember the 2011 season when LSU opened the season against Oregon?
Yep.
Well, the big argument was, Oregon's going to run all over LSU because they're so fast, right? Oregon's so fast. But the thing is, the average 40 time for our secondary was faster than their receivers and running backs.
Yeah.
Right? So the defense was actually faster. It's just not as flashy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, but Michigan did not have that advantage on Ohio State.
That's true.
And so until Harbaugh, well, now I'm gonna be honest, Ohio State should have been that bigger loser today, because not only did Dax Hill not commit to us, he went to Michigan. Right. And then you had Jordan Battle, a safety at Ohio State, switch his commitment to Alabama.
Right.
And then they lost a quarterback commit to Georgia, who had never even visited Georgia.
Right.
And so Ohio State did not have a good day. And the loss of Urban Meyer is going to hurt them.
And if you look at just the number of recruits, they only have 16 guys who signed. And that's the fewest until you get to Miami, who was one of the day's biggest losers with 15. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're not looking great. But another thing I want to say, y'all, the Blue Bloods of the Big 12 are back. In the recruiting game, at least, right? It might not be manifesting itself on the field yet, but they're looking good recruiting. Oklahoma and Texas are both in the top 10 recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma's getting back. I mean, not Oklahoma, Texas is getting back, and Oklahoma is in the playoff for the third time in a row. So Oklahoma is there,
right?
You know, and Texas is getting there. Tom Herman is doing good, but the only thing hurting Tom Herman is Jimbo Fisher at A&M now.
Yeah.
But yeah, Texas, I'm not going to say Texas is back because that just curses them. Every time somebody says Texas is back, they lose a game. But Texas is on the right track. We'll say that.
Right. They are. And I will say they're back in the recruiting game, right? Yeah. So that maybe some of their recruits will flip to LSU. But Texas really does look legitimate again for the first time since Mac Brown left.
Yeah, I agree.
And then of course you have Clemson, and then the ACC is just unrepresented from there. and you have Washington and Oregon, I believe, are the top two that I'm seeing. And that's a disparity of 5 Oregon and number 17 Washington, and then nobody else in the top 20. Like the Pac-12 and the ACC are big losers.
Yeah.
Group of 7. Hashtag group of
7. All right. Well, hey, it's been a good show. I really enjoyed talking about recruiting. We've never done a recruiting show. I've actually been following recruiting since 2004. That's how far. That's how far back my my account goes.
Right. So, okay. Do you remember? Like, do you just follow Alabama, or do you kind of keep up with the teams that Alabama plays too?
A little bit of both, because a lot of times you end up going after a lot of the same guys. And,
right.
And I will say, as I've gotten older, like I said, the older you get, the creepier it is to worry about what these 17, 18-year-old kids are doing, where they're going to go. And so I've kind of backed away off of it, and I just kind of casually follow from a distance and don't get too emotionally attached like I used to. But yeah, I used to be able to tell you about anybody.
Yeah. Well, it was weird seeing Tua win the national championship last year. He's younger than me by like a year. Like that was insane, because it's the first time that had ever happened. It was like, oh man, this is what am I doing with my life? But
hey, I feel like this. I remember being in Germany at the library trying to get online so I can figure out where Roy Upchurch committed to.
Oh wow, that's serious.
Yeah.
That's serious. That's some addiction there, man.
Yeah.
But I went to school with a kid last year he started the season as a 4-star recruit. Well, I didn't go to school with him last year, but he graduated last year, and he started the season as a 4-star receiver, and he broke his leg in the first game of the season, so he dropped down to a 3-star guy named Jure Jenkins. And so I was wondering if you had heard his name or anything, because it was really cool to see him go to LSU, and because that doesn't happen here a lot. Like, we have one guy from our town who's been to the NFL, like one dude.
Yeah.
And like, it was cool because he goes to LSU. He's this great prospect, and I don't think he saw the field this year, but it was still neat.
Yeah. Well, no, I hadn't heard of him. Like I say, I try to keep up with the top guys, the top 100. Right. Who's Alabama going after? Right. Who's Georgia going after? Auburn, Clemson, the big guys.
Okay, so I got on pretty late, and there's probably a lot of conversation that happened before I got on. So you probably already said this, but who are your top 3 guys for Alabama this year? Like, who are you excited about?
Oh yeah. Let's see. I was excited about the offensive line class as a whole. But this one guy did highlight Christopher Harris out of Louisiana. He's 6'2", 240. Inside linebacker.
Yeah, I was about to say that's backer size.
But that's not what he played in high school. He played corner. He played corner in high school.
What was his 40 time?
I'm not sure. I don't know. But he was 6'2", 240 playing corner.
That's a scary dude.
That is. So that's the person I'm most excited about in our class.
Right. I can't imagine Tim Tebow playing corner. Like, that's
exactly. I'm trying to think. I was glad to get Trey Sanders, even though I was really high on DJ Williams, who ended up going to Auburn. That if we didn't get Trey Sanders, we were going to offer him. But I'm super excited to get Trey Sanders. I think he's a special talent. I'm trying to remember on the D line. We signed a pretty good amount of defensive linemen that we really needed.
Good. Well, I say good. That's not good, but it's good that you're filling needs.
Right? Yeah, we hit the needs. And so I will say, Jordan, huh?
Yeah, we signed 6 D linemen and
6.
Yeah. 4 D ends and 2 tackles.
Yeah.
Were they? Where are they rated?
Let's see. Alfano was a 4-star. Well, actually, 5-star. No, he was a 5-star. Kid out of New Jersey. And
did he go to Turlings?
Colonial High School.
Okay, Turlings is the only school that I know it's up in New Jersey, and they're constantly like that high school. You see them on ESPN sometimes, and they'll zoom in on a couple of players, and it's like this kid is committed to Michigan, and this kid is going to Ohio State, and this kid's going to Alabama, and it's unbelievable. It's like how does any high school compete with you? But
yeah, short answer is they don't.
They don't. You're right. They're like the John Curtis of up there, and it's like they just kind of go undefeated every year.
Yeah.
Like I think it's been like 3 years since John Curtis has lost a football game.
Yeah.
Like it's unbelievable.
Yeah. So Alabama signed 7 defensive linemen. You got 5-star and number 28 overall, Alfano, number 75th overall, Justin Abigwe, number 113, Kevin Harris, 4-star, King Wakuta, 160. You got Braylon Ingram at 190, and you got DJ Dale at 4-star at 249. And so those were and then you got Byron Young, who's number 88 nationally as a 4-star. So they filled all of their needs. Because we were talking earlier about the defensive line was probably the biggest need based on how we haven't really recruited the last couple of years heavy there, and we've lost so many guys over the last couple of years and possibly this year.
Well, I think that this is maybe the weakest that Alabama's O-line has been in a long time. And they were still a very, very solid O-line. But, I mean, Tua got beat up this year. He took a lot of shots that Alabama quarterbacks usually don't take.
Yeah, that is true, but we also were passing the ball a whole lot more than we normally do.
Right, but even so, like Alabama usually blocks better for slow developing routes. Like Tua was in a lot of trouble this year over and over. Like, and that's a credit to the kid because I don't think his passing percentage fell under 70% for the season. I mean, it was unbelievable. Yeah. Of course, the same can be said for Jake Fromm. Like the kid is just unbelievable. Those two are going to go so high in the draft. Like I'm excited to see who picks them up. Hoping the Saints pick up Jake Fromm. All right, learn under Drew Brees a year or two, and then Drew can retire and Jake Fromm take the torch. But,
Yeah, I was impressed. Well, I was excited about getting Jordan Battle. That's the kid we got to flip from Ohio State, the safety, only because he's kind of compared to Eddie Jackson.
Okay,
he's long, lanky, rangy, can cover ground.
Right.
Good ball skills.
Right.
And so I'm kind of excited about having him. It's kind of like Deontay Thompson, who we have now.
Right.
So even though I hated to lose Dax Hill, to me, losing Dax Hill was like not getting Peppers. I don't know if you remember Peppers, who went to Michigan several years ago. We didn't get him, but we got Eddie Jackson.
Right.
I'm okay with getting Eddie Jackson if Peppers goes to Michigan. Okay. So that's kind of how I feel about Dax Hill. Exceptional talent.
Right.
The best way to describe him is fast twitch athlete.
Right.
He was just an explosive athlete.
Sure.
Alabama would be okay without him.
So let me ask you this, because historically, you look at LSU and their DBU, right? Their front seven hasn't always been the best. When they had guys like Sam Montgomery and Barkevious Mingo is when they were the most dominant, because their front seven usually isn't the best. But their secondary is always second to none, right? The passer rating against LSU this year was one of the top ones in the country. They almost led the country in interceptions for the whole season. They're great in the secondary, and that's been since the Nick Saban era at LSU when he moves over to Alabama. That's been one of the areas where Alabama has historically struggled. So you have this front seven that's unbelievably dominant at LSU, or at Alabama. That's unbelievably dominant, and the secondary kind of struggles in light of that. It's like their front seven makes up for the weaknesses in the secondary. Like you, historically, I've seen Alabama defenses where there's one guy in the secondary who's great, and all of the rest of them are not necessarily starters at LSU, and the front seven is just unbelievably great, and it makes up for the weaknesses in the secondary. But do you see that being shored up this season? Like, do you see these recruits coming in and shoring up the perceived weaknesses in the secondary for Alabama?
Yeah, and that's what I would say is perceived weaknesses. Whenever you play a style of play like Alabama, where you ask guys to be out on an island a lot, they're gonna get beat some. It's just the way it's gonna be.
Right. But to just in fairness, that doesn't happen at LSU. Like, if we go back to the 2011 season, you have Thorold Simon lining up with Eric Reed, lining up with Tyrann Mathieu was there, and you have another corner who's also brilliant, right? And those islands, you couldn't throw to them. Like, you couldn't pass the ball against that defense. And like, even this season or a season ago, you have guys like Greedy Williams and Tre'Davious White who are just terribly difficult to throw against. And that's not usually the case at Alabama. And what I mean is when quarterbacks have time to throw and they're not intimidated off the field, like they're pretty successful throwing the ball. I think particularly of Johnny Manziel or guys like who's the guy? Taj Boyd, I think, played for Clemson.
No,
like
Deshaun Watson.
Like those guys kind of did very well against the Alabama secondary, right? When they weren't running for their life from the front seven.
Well, I think you're highlighting individual games, whereas I can go back to LSU and highlight some individual games.
Sure.
You know,
sure. And
you're naming Heisman Trophy winners and top 10 NFL picks.
No, I grant that, but Lamar Jackson put up 9 points against LSU.
Lamar Jackson's not a passer.
That's kind of
Lamar Jackson is an athlete.
That's part of the point that I'm making. Like, dual threat quarterbacks are historically really difficult for Alabama to defend. All right, and you can look at. I don't really know why that's the case. Like, Johnny Manziel couldn't beat LSU, but he was kind of the Achilles heel for Alabama. Like, Alabama ended up having to match.
Well, I think until it was the defensive philosophy. Alabama was a 3-4, a heavy 3-4, built to stop the run, right? The Terrence Cody's of the world, right? So we're gonna be big up front, big, thick linebackers at 260, like Dante Hightower back then.
Yeah,
it was built on stopping the run. Whereas LSU was a 4-3 with small rush ends that can really get out to the passer, smaller linebackers, and you just had more speed on the field.
Okay.
Well, Alabama since 2015 has transitioned to more of that. We're still a 3-4,
right?
But we're lighter, we're smaller, we got more speed on the field. Yeah,
more of a nickel than like a bear or something.
Absolutely. And so when we were big and slow up front, those dual threat quarterbacks gave us a lot of problems because they were able to create with their legs. Yeah, and that just puts the secondary in a bad spot because now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that makes sense.
Playing more zone back then too, Kim.
Yeah.
Lots of zone blitzes from Alabama. Lots of them. Yeah. Because I mean, you have that dominant front seven. Send them, right? Just send them. Who cares?
Yeah.
Who's going to stop them? Right. And that was successful until you hit Deshaun Watson and Johnny Manziel. Right. And then those games, you can live with those.
I mean, to be fair, Deshaun Watson, man, was just an exceptional talent.
He was good.
Yeah, he was just good.
I mean, if you think about it, man, Pruitt, I mean, he beat him up. He beat him up the whole night. The second time.
Yeah.
When Clemson actually beat him. I mean, he blitzed all night. I mean, you go back and look at some of those first half hits, man, especially the one when he was twisted in the air.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they were teeing off on him, and I mean, he just kept coming.
Yeah.
Right.
The difference was with that particular game, and I highlight people. People say, man, Deshaun Watson ate y'all up. I'm like, look, through 80 plays, Clemson had 14 points.
And that's something people don't realize. Like the LSU A&M game, that both teams had 100+ snaps.
Yeah.
eventually, yeah, you're going to stop making stops because your defense hadn't had a break in 5 hours.
Yeah.
Like they're dog tired.
Yeah, and so Alabama's offense with Jalen Hurts could not get a first down. And the defense kept going back out there. Clemson scored 14 points on 80 plays. They scored 21 points on the next 19 plays. The defense was just worn down. So it wasn't so much of, oh, we're struggling with Deshaun Watson. No, the offense can't keep the defense off the field because they keep going 3 and out.
Right.
You know, and so it was a combination of that. If we could have gotten a couple of first downs, that defense was all over the field.
Well, I mean, I think the same can be said for lots of games in the past for LSU. I mean, even the 2011 national championship, if the offense can move the ball at all, like the defense steps up and they don't allow 21 points, right? They proved in Tuscaloosa that they could hold Alabama to fewer than 9.
Well,
right? And
right. But I mean, we missed like 5 field goals that game.
Right. With the help of some kickers, but that's to be expected at Alabama. And but they proved that they could hold Alabama to virtually no offense. But the offense didn't pick them up, right? So the offense can't get a first down. So eventually the defense is like, screw this. You know, it doesn't matter anymore. We can't score. So why are we holding these guys to so few points? It doesn't matter because 7 wins the game. Yeah. So go ahead and give up 14 or 21 because it's the same difference. Yeah. Right. Their will is broken. And that's happened several times since then too. But I think that was the biggest one because that really started the skid for LSU. I mean, from there, man, it's been sad.
Yeah. And to go back to your point between LSU and Alabama, because you would say your front 7 weren't as good, but Alabama's was.
Yeah.
Your front 7 was better at getting after the quarterback than ours was.
Okay.
We were very good against the run, and we could blitz you and get pressure. Right. But we couldn't just bring 4 guys and get pressure the way LSU could. Like
right.
Montgomery and those guys.
Yeah.
And so when you can bring 4 and get pressure and leave 7 in coverage, you're going to be much better against the pass.
That's fair.
Yeah. So it was really style of defense more so than talent of defense.
Okay, because I've always wondered that, like, why is LSU so good against these dual threat, great Heisman winning quarterbacks, and Alabama struggles so mightily, and that makes sense, right? Because you have your Johnny Manziels, your Lamar Jacksons, you know, those kinds of guys have historically done very well against Alabama, and not so at LSU. So, just curiosity there. But the secondary is going to be better this year, you think?
I think so. I mean, next year, just because I think the pass rush is going to be better with Terrell Lewis coming back off his ACL injury, and also Trevon Diggs to be back. I think he tore his ACL as well, and so you're talking about Trevon Diggs on one side and Patrick Surtain on the other side, and then it's going to be about experience. We replaced our entire secondary from last year to this year. There were no starters or in our entire dime package, there were no starters that came back this year. So you had 6 brand new guys back there. And to their credit, I mean, they've gelled over the course of the season. And all of those guys, except for Deontay Thompson, will be back next year. And so, I think they're going to be much better next year just because they've got a whole year of experience under their belt.
Okay. Well, I think the LSU offensive line is going to be much better next year, so maybe it'll be a closer loss.
I don't know.
Say, what happened to Ellis?
He's in Tuscaloosa this year, so I don't know.
What happened to Ellis? Could he not face me after I predicted Georgia losing to LSU?
No, I hit him up. Ellis knows nothing about recruiting.
That's fair. I understand that.
He'll be back next week.
From my predictions on the first show I came on, I was right about one of them. So
credit to you.
I came in making a whole bunch of bold predictions. I was like, the Astros and the Braves are going to be in the World Series, and LSU is going to beat Georgia and Alabama. And it was, man, just a bad year for me.
Hey, you went for it, man. That's all that matters.
250 won't even get you a starting spot in a lineup in the majors.
That's true. Right, man. Well, it's been fun. I think it's time to wrap this thing up.
Right.
Yeah, and we'll have to bring you back on as we get closer to the next signing day and the bowl season and LSU UCF and get your thoughts on that.
Not overwhelmingly positive, but you know, looking forward to it.
Just save it. We'll bring you on to.
All right, man. Looking forward to it.
All right, man. Good talk.
Good talk. Be a lot of fun.
Yep. All right, everybody. That's it for us. Wrapping it up. Thanks for joining us in this recruiting special. Hope your team did well. Hope you got the presents you were looking for on this Christmas morning. You know. Hey, any last thoughts, Randall?
Nah, man. I'm good. Great show. Thanks for having me on. Look forward to the next one.
Yep.
And you know, y'all keep your head up, non-Bama fans.
Yep. Everybody else, roll tide.
Roll tide.